You call that a push-up? All the way down! What is your major malfunction, dirtbag?
What the hell is going on out there? One degree, sir. You're not something coming up on you.
This time around, I'm going to be taking a look at Half-Life's official expansions, Opposing Force and Ble Shift.
See, now I've heard rumors that you troops may not actually be here to rescue us.
Unlike the first game, which was developed by Valve, these expansions were created by Gearbox Games. In fact, these expansions were Gearbox Games' first projects, well before being known for their Brothers in Arms or Borderlands series or their fumbles with Colonial Marines and Duke Nukem. Gearbox Games' first title was Half-Life Opposing Force, an expansion that set the stage for the studio's future in the gaming industry. While Valve laid the groundwork with the original Half-Life, Gearbox was tasked with building upon its success, and its work here marked the beginning of its journey into the spotlight of game development. In Half-Life Opposing Force, you play the role of yet another silent protagonist. This time around, instead of playing the theoretical physicist Gordon Freeman, you play Adrian Shepard, a corporal of the United States Marine Corps, HECU, Hazardous Environmental Combat Unit, a unit specially trained in close quarters and indoor combat scenarios involving dangerous locations and environments against unconventional opponents. What could they be doing that for? Unlike Freeman's journey of survival and science gone wrong, Shepard's role offers a different perspective, one that flips the narrative to the other side of the Black Mesa conflict, highlighting the chaos through the lens of a soldier caught in the same unfolding disaster. My initial feelings when loading up Opposing Force were familiar. I mean, I just beat the original Half-Life not all that long ago. Link in the video below. So that feeling was expected. From the moment the game began, it was clear that Opposing Force was staying true to the strengths of its predecessor while aiming to add its own twists. Much like its predecessor, it delivered on environmental storytelling. The setting itself, that is the Black Mesa Research Facility, is doing most of the heavy lifting here. With its sprawling design, every corridor and wrecked lab tells a piece of the larger story, immersing you in the aftermath of something that has gone horribly wrong. The game's pacing, with its blend of exploration, puzzles, and combat, feels just as good as the original, with just enough variety to keep you engaged without ever feeling repetitive. The combat, in particular, might even be slightly better this time around, thanks to the new weapons and the new enemies that Opposing Force has added. Speaking of new enemies, let's talk about them. Race X is a name given to the species of alien invading the Black Mesa Research Facility. No, not those ones. Yep, those ones. New ones, apparently. Not to be confused with the race usually called Xen, or Xen creatures by Black Mesa scientists, that originally poured out of the portal from Xen being the border world that these things spilled out from because of the resonance cascade. That's the name these games use for the big whoopsie that started all of this in the original Half-Life. You know, the one Gordon Freeman accidentally unleashed by shoving the alien crystal into the big laser machine. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Race X, and being different from the Xen. Why? Well, let's let Mark Laidlaw, ex-lead writer for Valve Software, who wrote for the original Half-Life and its sequel Half-Life 2, maybe tell us, or at the very least give us a better idea.
Race X was purely a Gearbox creation that doesn't figure at all in my thinking about the world. Understand, they wanted to come up with a set of creatures that would create gameplay they knew how to make. They could have been making an original title or an add-on for some other franchise and plugged Race X into that. The reason being that they had gameplay they wanted to explore and needed the freedom of their own race of critters to conduct those experiments with. As for Race X being from Xen, I'm not sure any of the aliens we've seen were actually from Xen originally. Xen is a border world, a place you have to go through to get to the other places. It was colonized by certain creatures that could adapt to it. The Race X creatures didn't seem particularly well adapted to Xen. I imagine their home lay somewhere beyond.
These two quotes from Mark Laidlaw, which are from an old forum called Valve Time that no longer exists, thanks to Wayback Machine, not only clarify how Race X differs from the original Xen creatures, but also highlight the different creative approaches between Valve and Gearbox. Where it seems like Valve focused on creating a cohesive, interconnected world, Gearbox's apparent focus took a different approach, making gameplay a priority first, adding their own flavor to opposing force. It's fascinating to think about Race X, an enemy that was designed purely to fit gameplay mechanics, first and foremost, rather than do deepen the lore or advance the story. And yet, I feel like their presence added a thin layer of intrigue, even if they felt slightly disconnected from the main Half-Life universe. The new weapons are all nice touches, adding some welcome variety to the arsenal and helping to differentiate opposing force from the original Half-Life.
Ah, yes, Walter. We were finally able to successfully detach one of the barnacle creatures from its point of gestation. As before, we were still only able to coerce the creature into latching onto organic materials.
The barnacle hookshot, in particular, stands out to me as one of the better additions. It's a clever twist, turning an enemy from the first game into a common video game tool for traversal, opening up new ways to interact with the environment not utilized at all in the original. That said, it does feel like the barnacle hookshot could have been utilized a bit more. Now let's talk about what bothered me, and it had to do with
elevators.
Again. Well, partially. See, this time around, my only real gripe with the game was this stupid bug I got quite a few times. It's the kind of glitch that completely yanks you out of the experience. I don't know if this was the way the game was on launch, or if this came after one of the big updates, like the 25th anniversary update, as an example. No matter the reason, it won't make the annoyance the bug caused any less, well, annoying. It's one of those things that, while not game-breaking, still makes you wonder how it slipped through the cracks or stayed in the cracks for so long. At least the bug is somewhat predictable. After the first time, I started compulsively quick-saving and jumping whenever I saw an elevator just in case. Still, it doesn't stop you from getting stuck on an invisible glue trap when hitting a loading spot because there was no elevator to use as a warning to quick-save here. This particular bug caused me to have to replay long sections, and I f***ing hated that. My final thoughts on opposing force are positive for the most part. That bug was rather rage-inducing. But I've talked about that, and come on, we got this. Just forget about that bug. Opposing Force was a fun expansion. Short and action-packed, it delivered exactly what I hoped for. More Half-Life, but with a fresh twist. I really did enjoy the combat a lot in this expansion. Not that the first Half-Life's combat was bad or anything, but this one just had more dagga-dagga, you know? It felt more chaotic in the best possible way, with bigger, more intense firefights and an expanded arsenal that kept things interesting from start to finish. The interactions with other soldiers stood out as a real improvement too. They have a few more uses than just being glorified door openers, though there's still one of those. However, with the addition of the medic, who basically serves as a mobile healing station, and a selection of different grunts with unique weapon types, Opposing Force manages to at least feel more dynamic. It's not just you against the world anymore, it's you and a squad, even if they're mostly expendable. Half-Life Opposing Force builds on the foundation of the original Half-Life with just the right mix of new weapons and new enemies to keep things fresh. I really enjoyed it, even if a few bugs tried their best to kill my vibe.
There he is! Calhoun, you've arrived! When you didn't come through right away, we thought that Oh no, there's something wrong here. Simmons, come look at Calhoun! His body seems to be in some sort of resonance display.
Dodged the bullet on that one. I'll cover you! You go around them!
see it again. Mr. Marlowe. Oh, Mr. Marlowe. You're here about some kind of a story, aren't you?
It's gone. It's okay. There's nothing out here.
Oh, thank God you made it. I was worried that a malfunction occurred at the last moment and you might have been caught in an infinite harmonic reflux. If that's the case, then you're lucky to be standing here.
Now let's talk about the second expansion they made for Half-Life, a little title called Ble Shift. Another title that fits the naming scheme of the series. In Half-Life Ble Shift, you play the role of, you guessed it, another silent protagonist. This time you're not wielding a crowbar or commanding soldiers, you're one of Black Mesa's finest, a member of the security team by the name of Calhoun, Barney Calhoun. Wait, rewind a bit. There we go, back to the original Barney, before the Resistance, before Civil Protection disguises, and before his reputation as a fan-favorite character in Half-Life 2. This is the Barney Calhoun who, like Gordon Freeman and Adrian Shepard, finds himself swept up in the chaos of Black Mesa's downfall. So here's Barney, starting his day off like any other, taking a tram ride into the Black Mesa research facility. Classic move, Barney. We soon run into a hitch, however, with a door having problems opening and we have to wait for a coworker to get the thing working properly. At this point, we have ourselves a little crossover moment. A tram passes by with a familiar looking face in it, and it becomes apparent that we are that one security guard in the original Half-Life's tram opening scene, the one pounding on the door to be let in. It is a small touch, but it does what it's supposed to do, grounding me to this moment from the first game and rooting Ble Shift to the Half-Life story as a whole. So, how did Ble Shift make me feel upon initially loading it? Same old, and I don't know if I mean that positively. Black Mesa Research Facility, in my opinion, is a great setting location. I easily see why it is considered a classic. The sterile hallways, industrial equipment, and sprawling design still hold up in their atmosphere, but the familiarity is hard to ignore. And Ble Shift does show you some locations from the first Half-Life, but from a different angle or a slightly different time frame, which is a nice touch for fans of the original game. It's like revisiting an old neighborhood, but noticing all the small details you missed. Speaking of time frames, Ble Shift very much takes place during the first half of the original Half-Life story. You're right there for the chaos caused by the Resonance Cascade, witnessing the breakdown of Black Mesa as it happens. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Opposing Force, thanks to the helicopter Corporal Shepard was on crashing, takes place during the original Half-Life's second half, the opposite of Ble Shift. It's an interesting narrative split, with each expansion giving you a different slice of the disaster to experience. As for new things that were added to Ble Shift, well, there are no new weapons or enemies, which is kind of disappointing, especially after my enjoyment of those very things in Opposing Force. It's a bit of a letdown not having that extra layer of variety, especially since new tools and challenges made Opposing Force feel so fresh. I understand that Ble Shift was released as a standalone expansion, meaning it did not need the original Half-Life to run and play. This is different from Opposing Force, which, as a traditional expansion, required the original game to be installed. Apparently, Ble Shift was originally going to be an add-on for the Dreamcast version of Half-Life, much like they did with Decay and the PS2 release of the game. A little extra on the side for those specific console Half-Life releases. Side note, Decay never made it to the PC, being exclusive to the PS2 version of Half-Life. It's also designed to be played co-op from start to finish, which is unique for a lot of games, but especially for ones from 2001. It's an interesting oddity in the series, and while it never officially came to the PC, it is playable as a mod for the PC version of Half-Life. Maybe I'll play it and make a video of it sometime in the future. The Dreamcast version of Half-Life, however, was eventually cancelled, and Gearbox Games saved Ble Shift by turning it into a standalone expansion. Oh, and they also added HD models for weapons, including the player's hands that hold them, enemies, and NPCs. Originally created for the Dreamcast version of both Half-Life and Ble Shift's expansion, these HD models would later become available as an option for both the PC versions of the original Half-Life and Opposing Force. I even tried them out for a bit in each playthrough. They look cleaner and more detailed, but honestly, I wasn't a huge fan. There's just something about the charm of the original models, the blocky simplicity, the way they feel so tied to the era, that made me prefer them. Before I move on to bugs I experienced and my final thoughts on Ble Shift, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how the game changed how armor works. In the original Half-Life, Gordon had a hazardous environmental suit. In opposing force, Corporal Shepard had the powered combat vest. Both of those armors go up to 100, much like your health, and are chargeable at any of the electrical charge stations that are usually found near medical stations but are sometimes found on their own. In Ble Shift, Barney's armor is split between what is essentially a Kevlar vest and a helmet, with the vest providing 60 armor and the helmet giving Barney his final 40. Unlike Gordon or Shepard, Barney cannot recharge his armor at electrical charge stations and instead must find vests and helmets lying around. It's more of a throwback to how older FPS games did it and how they used to handle their armor systems where players relied on physical pickups scattered throughout levels. I think this change was done to try to make the main character of Ble Shift, Barney Calhoun, feel more like an everyman or I'm just a guy character type. He's not equipped with cutting-edge technology or specialized combat gear. He's just a security guard trying to survive a catastrophic event. This subtle difference adds to the grounded tone of Ble Shift, reinforcing Barney's role as an underdog in the chaos of Black Mesa. As for the infamous elevator bugs of the other two titles I played, I did not experience anything akin to it even once during my playthrough. There was a crash on load that happened and it nuked the save, but I just loaded a previous save. Thankfully, it was just a minute or two before that one was nuked, so everything was fine, just a couple of minutes of progression lost. It seems to me at least that Ble Shift is the more stable of the two, but that could just be my personal experience. Stability issues can vary from person to person depending on the setup, but overall, I had no significant complaint on this front. I'm just glad this didn't happen to me this time around. Thank you for watching my silly little video. If you enjoyed it, please like or maybe even subscribe. Leave a comment too, even if you didn't enjoy it. Let me know why or why not. I made these to be short for now, but I do hope to do longer ones in the future. While I'd probably make a video for any game, I aim to focus more on CRPGs, tabletop RPGs, and indie titles. We'll see though, who knows what the future holds.
What's your name?
I'm Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.
What the was that, you little freckle-faced cartoon?